Hey everybody, Glenn Hausman here of No Vacancy, and I'm excited to talk with you guys today. Why? Because we're going to try something a little bit different. And I think you're going to be really delighted for it, mostly because you guys don't have to hear me speak for another hour. No! I am handing over the reins today to other folks to handle this particular podcast. Why? Because in the future, I really want what we're doing here at NoVacancyNews.com and the No Vacancy Network is to really create a place where we can house all of the videos and all the podcasts and all of this news excitement that's happening in the industry that all of you great folks are generating out there today. So I thought today we would start off with a great panel discussion from an event that I attended a couple of months ago, which was Amadeus' customer conference. And we were in Florida. It was great. And I learned a lot, and I got this great recording focused on the future of central reservation systems, because there's been a lot of interest on this topic because there's so many changes occurring in the industry, particularly regarding guest experiences, art of personalization, and the role of the CRS in meeting new guest expectations. So there's a lot of great discussion here, a lot of stuff to energize your thoughts, get the juices flowing there with some great ideas, and some very compelling points for hoteliers with large and small properties alike. I hope you enjoy it. Give it a listen and drop us a line and let us know what you think. Drop me a line. I'm Glenn@rouse.media. That's ROUSE.media. Or find me online anywhere at Traveling Glenn or on our pages on LinkedIn or Facebook and everywhere else. So enjoy the show, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. It's a full room. This is great. My name's Mark Bedard. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for CRS and PMS Solutions at Amadeus. Behind me, we have assembled quite a crew, a few characters on this panel as well. But we're here today bringing you some perspective from the property enterprise level, as well as just some industry expertise. We hope you'll take advantage of that when we get to the end of our panel discussion to ask them any questions you might have pertaining to the CRS of the present or the future. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to our moderator, Mr. John Burns.
Mark, good afternoon. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Welcome. In conversation with Mark, I said this will be a full house. We're going to be standing room only. This is a CRS conversation. The world wants to hear this. So why are we here? CRS, what does the future hold? Some really good questions. We're going to spend the next hour or so talking about CRS, getting opinions from various people with respect to where CRS is going and how it fits into the bigger picture. A couple of slides. Let's see, we won't worry. Well, we'll get this out of the way. My name's John Burns. I'm an independent technology consultant. I work in distribution, have been doing it for a few years, and it's been fascinating to watch how the world has turned, how the whole distribution world has evolved, and to speculate where it's going. We're going to talk today, and I think the next slide is our setup slide of what's happening in CRS. Yes, the past and the present. So we've got two hard-to-read slides. This one says that the CRS world has been evolving over 70 years, that it started with Westron, Holodecks. There's been significant and substantial change with every decade. So now we're in the 2010s, and we're looking forward even to the 2020s. There is faster activity and more activity than we've ever seen. Second slide talks about the fact that the CRS is the center of the world. I've known this in all my career. Some of my PMS colleagues would possibly suggest that I'm a little off base. I don't think so. So CRS is the central repository for so much data on behalf of all the properties it serves. Central Res makes it possible for distribution through call centers, through brand.com, through OTAs, any number of sales outlets. It is the connection to any number of resources like revenue management and CRM, loyalty databases, those sort of things. So I see Central Res as the center of our universe. We'll see if that's borne out. So we're going to talk about CRS with a panel of 5 individuals. First up, Ted Horner. Ted Horner is based in Sydney and has been in the game even longer than I have. He talks to his clients, which are really spread throughout the world, about CRS, PMS, and any number of technologies. I'm going to ask each one of our customers, each one of our panelists, what their first exposure was to a CRS. So, Ted, in a few words, what was your first CRS?
Oh, I'd say probably Anastasia.
Okay.
And the other one that was talked up big and was going to be the big thing in the early days when I came to my first TITEC was Confirm. It was going to be the next big thing with American Airlines and quite a number of big hotel chains, and sadly over a period of time it disappeared from the scene altogether.
I refer to it as the ill-fated Confirm reservation system. Best of intentions, we could spend a whole session just talking about it. We won't. All right, so next up, we have Tim Kinsella, and Senior Vice President, Global Sales, Amadeus Cloud, PMS, and Payments. Amadeus, yes. What a title. You get a double-sided card.
It's a mouthful.
Tim, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us, what was your first CRS?
When I was a student at UNLV, go Rebels, I did my hotel, got my experience at the Best Western Mardi Gras on Paradise Road. And it was the Best Western system. I didn't know it was a CRS at the time.
Yep.
We were still working out of the bucket. And no, the CRS did not accept reservations by the hour, but I was asked often at that particular hotel.
But we're still struggling with that capability, and we'll see what happens. So next up on our speaker panel, we have Patrick Vandervoort, Head of Product Strategy, Amadeus Cloud PMS, Amadeus. Patrick, welcome.
The trifold business card as well.
Yeah. Your first CRS?
I must say Holodex. When in 1996 we deployed our PMS at the first Holiday Inn Express in Europe. And then at the time no interface, and then we started off with a one-way interface, and it became a 1.5, and then a two-way interface. So Holodex has been in our backyard for a long time.
So particularly significant as Amadeus and the Amadeus Central Res replaces the Holodex, you see history in the making.
Yep.
Very good. Next on our panel, we have Curtis Brewer, Senior Vice President, Reservations and Web Solutions, TravelClick and Amadeus Company. Curtis, welcome.
Thank you.
Your first CRS.
So I was trying to think about the first time I booked direct and I guess indirectly interacted with the CRS, which I think was Marriott. But otherwise, I'm a CRS monogamist, so iHotelier is my one and only CRS.
Great plug.
Very good line. Although, we'll remember Marcia. Marcia is almost as old as Holodex. Yeah, a part of CRS history. And last but not least, we have Will Dara, Vice President of Reservation Solutions, TravelClick, an Amadeus Company. Will, welcome.
Thank you. So my first CRS experience, I actually think it's important the timeline because I think I'm younger than most on the stage. So 2005, I had a split. So I've used Pegasus for the GDS and Sabre for the booking engine connectivity.
That's an interesting juggling act.
Yeah, preferred hotel group made me split. So
okay,
yeah.
Fair enough. All right, good. So that launches in our discussion. As a preface, I want to say we have an interesting chemistry here because we have our international consultant as referee, as middleman, and then we split. The two gentlemen closest to us represent Amadeus and the enterprise platform, the new Amadeus CRS, which is installed as a replacement for Holodex and really targets the largest brand customers. Two gentlemen on the other end are, as we've introduced, with TravelClick and have the iHotelier CRS, which serves very capably independent properties and then small to medium brands. So this panel works well because we've got the perspectives of two quite different organizations, two quite different platforms, both trying to do the same thing, and Ted is the peacemaker in the center. All right, so good. Ted, you watch CRS and PMS. As you look at the current list of suspects, why does CRS need to be updated? What do you see in terms of current systems that are struggling and are strained to do what they should?
Well, I think I'd like to refer back to the CEO's opening address yesterday, and I think the word that kept coming through is personalisation. And the reality today is if you're a global hotel chain, it doesn't matter I'm in Sydney, Australia or Tulsa, Oklahoma, I want the information about me to be available everywhere. And the question we probably should be asking is not so much the future of CRS, we should probably be asking the future of PMS, because it's, in my opinion, failed as a body. And if you've looked at all the other things that have come off, revenue management, CRM, etc., the reality now is that it seems to me, with the next generation of technology, is that having all of that information in the cloud, no matter where I travel around the world, and as we start mining data and personalising, I'm tired of, as we all get every day, emails from various hotel chains asking me for free nights or a discount here. I want to know more about what's unique to Ted Horner and personalised offers, and to travel around the world and go to a Marriott or a Hilton or a Hyatt, no matter where I am in the world, and have someone at that property know all about Ted Horner to me. So my sense is the future of CRS is even more important than ever before, because the future of our industry is the capacity of little hotel groups, independents and big hotel groups, to mine the data to provide a unique, using that lovely new word, experiential, right? After all, we're being shown up as an industry badly by Airbnb because that's what it's doing, right? So I think my answer is, I think you're going to see more functionality in CRS moving forward, and maybe the commoditisation and maybe ultimately PMS vendors. And I think the great challenge for the PMS vendors are the legacy vendors. The vendors that have been sitting on a legacy system for many years, and I'm not going to mention any names, I'm sure you can all draw your own conclusions. And I think, to be honest, we're going to see a fundamental shift, and I think companies that are investing in central res systems are going to incorporate all those things, single database, not silos of information as we've had. I think that's personally my opinion on the future.
Well, Ted's touched on half a dozen things that we're going to
Sorry.
drill down. No, it's good. All right. All right. Thank you. Introduction.
Thank you for the session, John.
Ted hit a number of points. Let's talk, and I'm interested in any perspectives on something that Ted started with, which is our current systems work with generic customers. We don't have identity, we don't have identification or recognition. Do you see that as a shortcoming? Do you see other shortcomings that the new generation of CRS needs to address?
Curtis,
or Will?
Yeah, sure, I'll take that.
Yep.
I think the PMSs, for one, have failed, right, in terms of loading in data, notes and comments, not interfacing comments or personalization of history to really any systems whatsoever, right? So PMSs have failed, which have now relied on the CRSs to say, okay, we're building more robust functionality into the space. Obviously, TravelClick, we made 2 acquisitions in the CRM space to really start mining that guest data, mining the personalization of the data, and eventually we're going to get down to what Ted said, which was personalized offers for Ted, not just for a segment of our business. We're getting to segmentations of our business, we're getting to channel segmentations, but eventually it will get down to the guest level in which we'll really know Ted, we'll know he wants a king-size bedroom, we'll re-index the sort order of the booking engine so it's specific to Ted.
All right. Patrick, your background is extensively in PMS, so you've looked at CRS from a distance and said it's too bad the system doesn't do what?
Well, it's been traditionally based on room types, right? So room types and rates, and that's basically it. And if we want to come to personalization, then it needs a lot more than that. So effectively bringing the PMS, or take it out of the center of attention and making the CRS the single version of the truth, holding all the data, holding physical room inventory versus just room types.
Yeah.
So that will give you the ability to do a lot more already. So really, going back to the comment about PMS. PMS is did what they had to do, not so much failed. They served a purpose up till a certain point. But it's now time, the industry has changed, the dynamics of the industry have changed, the guest requests have changed. So bringing it all together in a platform versus a CRS or a PMS, bringing it together in the platform is what it needs.
Okay, so the world changed, expectations changed. We've got to look at our CRS, and in some cases PMS, but CRS platforms that in many cases are a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades or 4 decades old, and do some rethinking. Agreed?
I agree, and I'm going to just jump in and sort of piggyback on what Patrick is saying. We sort of see a day where this concept of PMS and CRS as different siloed systems disappears, and it's all about services being offered to the hotel, whether it's on the reservation side or whether it's on operations. Let's just call it what PMS is. It's a cash register that enables your, your restaurant bill to be added to your folio, and that's it. So, we've even gotten, as we're out in front of folks, some of the large chains are slapping our hands that we're even using these terms PMS and CRS anymore, because their vision is, again, as Patrick was mentioning, a platform that allows you just to access whatever, only the services that you need when you need them. So I think that's really interesting.
Okay.
I mean, I think that the name of this panel is the future, the vision of CRS, the future of the CRS.
Yep.
So I agree. I think everyone would agree with that vision or that future as a great vision or future. I think something that we have to also work through as an industry is how we help hoteliers get there, and probably in phases or stages.
Yep.
And I talked a little bit yesterday about this too. Working mostly with independent hotels,
Right.
I think that is quite a journey to get to that vision. And so I think one thing we've maybe failed in is how we make the CRS really easy to use, easy to configure, easy to manage for teams. We talk about personalization. We talk about complexity of distribution. CRSs are very complex as well, which I find frustrating, and something we're really focused on. Then also how we can be better integrated, because we want to get to this vision and this future. I think it sounds amazing and much more effective, but it's going to take a while. So in the meantime, how do we enable all of these more sophisticated functions for the CRS to manage revenue, distribution, but do it in a way that's easy to use and also still speaks to the systems that, by the way, your front desk staff are using once Ted Horner shows up, to actually recognize that it's Ted Horner.
Well,
most people know what you look like.
Let's pursue that. We'll talk specifically about personalization as one of our vision items, one of our goals. We're hoping that new generation CRS can help us achieve personalization. How exactly do we define personalization? How does personalization show up in the CRS and then when you're on property? Do you want to take it?
Yeah. So I'll take it from a couple different aspects. So I think there's the recognition aspect of personalization, but I also think it's also arming, as Curtis said, our operational team members, that when somebody's coming in, that there's some automation of personalization that says maybe they're an elite customer, maybe or some sort of fashion there. I also think from an automation standpoint of personalization, there's a lot of data in the system that we need to figure out how to get that out and get it in the hands of those who can use it in a personalized manner. If we knew that 40 people were valet parking the last time they stayed and now they're coming back to stay, that could help with labor costs, operational costs, but again, personalization. So I think there's a lot more to unlock in terms of automation and big data as it relates to unlocking the system's potential.
Okay.
But I think if we look at the history of CRS, I think we've also seen that typically in the past, central res systems were geared around room types. And I think we're now starting to see, and I think this has probably been borne out with Amadeus' experience with IHG, is that now the future, I believe, is selling room attributes. And part of that process is understanding if the guest came and returned, that he might want to stay in a particular room with a particular view. It maybe had his wedding anniversary in a certain room. And I think if we could provide that information, that would help the personalisation component, and that hasn't been in the past in the old-fashioned CRSs. We didn't have that capability to sell rooms by attributes, and I think we're going to see a fundamental shift in our industry. And also for the big hotel chains to remain competitive, they're all going to have to embrace central res that have the attribute capability.
Yeah. I also
right.
think, I think in many ways also the CRS is well positioned to be kind of the foundational tool for personalization. So, you know, if you talk to most independent hoteliers, they're using a local agency for their website.
Yep.
They're using maybe MailChimp or Constant Contact for email marketing. They're only using their CRS for maybe revenue management and distribution. That doesn't really work if you're talking about personalization, right? So I think a fully integrated CRS or total solution that also speaks to your website and powers content, rates,
Media.
taps into the profile, powers your digital media,
Yep.
also, of course, powers your email marketing campaigns. All of that, I think, can really be driven out of the CRS, or should be. And I think that's actually an area where we can keep evolving and making the CRS more powerful.
All right.
Plus
Tim,
having a profile engine, that's where, you know, in the CRS, traditionally the profile data was in 5 or 6 different silos.
Yep.
So how can you come to personalization when my data is spread over all these silos? So bringing it back into one profile engine is
Can I pay
It starts, but let me just build on what we've heard. So Will is saying personalization depends on all these resources. What does it look like when you're talking to the guest or the guest arrives on property? How do we achieve personalization? What are the tools? What's the manifestation of personalization? Can you talk to that?
Well, I can. Actually, I'm going to go to the other side. You're exactly right. There's the recognition of the guest and being able to teach something up, but there's also personalization, and this is piggybacking on what Ted was mentioning as far as giving the guest what they want. And you know, we've seen retail really has solved this, right? You can go online and you can get custom jeans. You can get Nikes with a different colored swoosh.
Yep.
I heard it said best, and forgive me for those that have heard this story, I was in front of a big brand and there was a revenue manager that said, I want my guests to make a pizza. I was like, tell me about that. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. And she was using specifically the example of Domino's and how, whether you're on your app or you're on the computer, you add olives and boop, olives pop up. And you put ham and pineapple on, I know that's a divisive topic, ham and pineapple on a pizza. But you see it, and then when you hit go, you find out, you get a little note that Jim has put your pizza in the oven. The guest is engaged, right? They're part of the process. Ooh, It's on the way. And it's driven real margin increases within Domino's and market share. Mm-hmm. And so why can't we do that in an industry where experiential is that much more important? So, and that gets into attributes, and it's being able to serve it up correctly as the booking process goes on. So I'm sorry I didn't answer your exact question.
Well, but you're teasing us nicely. So you're talking about making the pizza, attribute-based selling. Presumably you're able to tell that story because the new platform, the Amadeus CRS, will bring some of that to the marketplace.
Absolutely. Yes.
All right. So we can do that in part of our travel shopping, travel planning. What does personalization look like once you're on property? What does it look like for the arrival and stay segment of the journey? Patrick?
Well, it's making sure that I mean, you see things coming up in airports like facial recognition, right? Mm-hmm. So Dubai, seamless. It needs to be seamless, and it needs to be frictionless, and making sure that you don't ask the same question. Have you stayed with us before? The one question
yes,
that you
last
get
week and the week before.
Exactly.
Yes.
27,000 times. So I think that's important, and incorporating new technologies on property and making sure that you communicate with the guest while on property, after arrival. Text message or whatever message. Make sure that the room is right, and halfway along the stay in touch with the customer so you can make sure that he feels at home, but also if there's something wrong, you'll be able to solve it while the guest is still on property,
all right,
rather than him or her writing a review after the fact. So
it's not just an occupied room; it's a living guest that you're in contact with.
And have interactions.
Real quick, I think Kimpton does a great job. I specifically, we're in a great hotel. I was here a year ago. I called for extra pillows, and when I checked in, I had extra pillows. You didn't even have to ask, and that's a real warm and fuzzy right there.
Ted, you're dealing with hotel owners, hotel operators. How do they feel about personalization? Do they want it? Do they fear it? Do they think they can accomplish it?
Well, I think the reality is at the end of the day for owners is that, the attitude for a lot of owners is I've gone and had an operator, a Marriott or a Hilton or Hyatt. I'm going to leave it to them and their job. But I think we're in and now in a new performance orientated environment where you've got lots of KPIs. And I think you're going to find owners are going to invest more time in understanding the process, and maybe management contracts moving forward may not be as long because they haven't delivered on the promise, and I think, part of my job as a consultant to owners, which is essentially the people who fund the technology in hotels, is to educate them. I think I've still got a long way to go. I've said this before and I'll say it again, we look at our industry and our investment in technology and hospitality is very low compared to other industries, and maybe that's a fault of vendors in the marketplace, maybe the lack of understanding for mature gentlemen who think that it's more important to have gold taps and lovely things in the foyer. So I think you're going to find as we get and aggregate more data, you're also going to put that information in the hands of owners who are going to have a better opportunity to start making comparisons about the relative strengths or otherwise. I always struggle at the moment, with great respect to the owner in the room is from Marriott, with how Marriott can excel to owners the fact they've got 33 brands. I really do, and so my sense is that at the moment when I talk to owners, they're all about, well, I've gone and engaged with a Marriott or a Hilton or whatever, and I'm going to leave the job of managing guest data and profiling stuff up to them because I'm just going to fund it. But I may be asking questions in a year's time if some of the KPIs haven't been met.
Okay. We've talked about personalization, recognition part. Really an outside force, and I'm referring here to Airbnb and peer-to-peer accommodation, has forced us to deal with experiential travel. We've been confronted by a competitor who says, I can offer something special. I can offer a special welcome. I can offer a special environment. I can offer special activities. And we in the hotel business, the traditional hotel business, I think are attempting to adjust, to wrap our minds around experiential travel and to somehow offer experiences, memorable experiences. So, does the CRS of the future help us in packaging and presenting and selling experiential travel, guys?
This one really stresses me out, actually. So,
not just you.
Hoteliers now not only have to run the hotel and focus on ADR and occupancy RevPAR, they have to now cultivate these local experiences, right? Or many of them believe. And they have to find ways to partner with local companies and then ultimately deliver quality experiences to their guests. From a CRS standpoint, we talk about this all the time because we're in the business of integrations oftentimes for iHotelier. And we're always trying to find new organizations that we can integrate with so that you can then package into the booking flow new experiences, right? And it's so fragmented and so local that it's quite challenging. So, I do think as a CRS, you need to be thinking about that and at least how you can help inventory and help present experiences for prospective guests so that they can do that and book that online. But it's not easy. But I don't think it's easy for Airbnb either, by the way, because I was in Mexico City last weekend with friends, and we went on a food tour, a good food tour actually. We met some guys who were staying at an Airbnb. We stayed in an independent hotel. And they were saying, we went on this local experience tour that Airbnb pitched to us, but it was terrible. The quality was bad. It didn't, the timing wasn't what it was. They said it would be online. So I just think cultivating all of these local experiences with local providers is quite challenging.
I found the best. I'm sorry, go ahead,
Will, and then
I was just going to add to that. So there's a couple of things on the reservations front. Getting live inventory and live rates, because are you guys going to roll out golf tee time software rolled into the booking engine or spa software? Why hasn't Open Table rolled into Booking.com? These are all disparate businesses that cause a lot of fragmentation, and trying to connect them and put them together, very, very challenging. So I think it's the right move to think about, but Airbnb, I can say, hey, I'm going to take people up Camelback Mountain in Arizona and offer it for $25. That's still a separate experience booked outside of booking that Airbnb room. So on our booking engine today, you could book enhancements, you could still book that tour. You got to find somebody who's going to take them up the mountain, but they've clearly opened up the space from an experience standpoint, but it's still not an integrated, slick process.
Yep.
And when you look at companies like Expedia, I mean, Expedia's looked at the statistics. It's like 8 to 10% of people buy an enhancement when buying the room. So that enhancement's going to come later in the shopping process. People are going to shop, they're going to lock in their room, they're going to lock in their airfare. 7 days, 14 days before arrival, they start getting excited about the stay. Then there's got to be a CRM tool or something else that's going to be personalized based on either what they clicked on it or what they're interested in to then buy.
Yeah, but what we talk about, I mean, I spend a lot of time flying long distances, and why can't we, in the central res, have the history, like we're trying to communicate to our guests before they arrive, during, of course, I think we've now addressed the issue of during our stay and beyond. So why can't a hotel, know that I've arrived on a 16-hour flight from Sydney, Australia? Or the fact that I've driven somewhere? Because then the other thing is if the front desk staff knew where I was from, although most people can pick up my accent, so that's probably not too difficult, but that I've come from somewhere else and engage with me to show some interest that, you know, so why can't we package up transportation? I'm leaving tomorrow night and going to a little place, it's filmed called Dubrovnik in Croatia, and I received an email yesterday from the little apartment I'm staying in the old part of the city asking me, one, what time was I checking in, and two, did I need them to provide local transportation? Now, okay, that was booked through Expedia, but the apartment I'm staying in is communicating to me directly, asking me specific questions. Do I need some assistance in terms of coming from the airport? Now, I don't get those sort of things in a traditional CRS. Now, I know I'm not saying it is not easy and difficult, but the reality, at the end of the day, if we want to create that endless, like in the old days with HT&G with single guest itinerary, why can't we have in that record information about the airline where we're flying from? The transportation from airport, and maybe the hotel could be, proactive in terms of, asking, providing some alternative transportation, etc. And that's the thing I find, that if we want to personalise the journey, not just the hotel stay, that we need all that information, if we can, in that single repository.
Well,
So
that's a good point.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on the destination. But if you look at Amadeus, we obviously have a little bit more travel information in our systems here and there. So PNR, when you book on Qantas, you get your which is Amadeus. You get your PNR, and that PNR could be also your reservation number for the hotel. And if your flight gets delayed, the hotel system gets notified if your flight gets canceled. But it could be all the parts in your itinerary, right? It could be your rail, your cruise, your car. It could be anything that maybe super PNR corresponds to, and that's things that we're thinking about.
Let me ask you a question. You can weave your answer, all the bits and pieces. The two guys on the far end talked about putting together experiences and the difficulty in weaving those experiences into our current platform or a series of systems. Viator was around for 10 or 15 years. Trying to work with hotel companies. Viator has tens of thousands of tours. And we as an industry were not particularly interested in working with them and trying to include the opportunity to book tours on our websites or what have you. They were eventually bought by TripAdvisor. Are we moving to a point where we're looking for greater integration, where we see a need for a guest service and satisfaction, or just competitive reasons to reach out and do more packaging, more bundling, both of on-property services and neighborhood services? Where are we going?
Okay, where are we going? So I'm just going to pick up on what Curtis was saying, is that experiences are important, but when you're doing it from a corporate level, you're a little distanced. I've had my best experience with Airbnb when the hosts are the ones that are suggesting things.
Yes.
So how do we how do we industrialize? How do we create a technology that can allow the local provider the ability to self-control whatever they think is going to be key to offer Ted Horner transportation, tours, whatever. So, and you know, in working with IHG, certainly as our launch partner, which we're super happy about, we're building, the Amadeus CRS has non-room, what we call non-room inventory built into the platform.
Okay.
And we think that's really interesting. What does that mean? It can mean whatever you want it to mean. It can be 20 bikes that you have, and people, as they're booking, can book that. It could be, you know, anything that you'd want to inventory, because obviously if somebody's booking it, you want to make sure that you can deliver it, so you have to keep track of it. So how do we do that? And then whether you charge for it is a whole other thing. How do you yield it? That's a whole other thing. But the idea is to build, you know, I think there's some really, you know, perhaps you've read about Accor's digital transformation, right? They're really out there doing some pretty cool, brave things. And they want to, you know, they've got this idea that, you know, why is WeWork, why can't we've got this footprint, we've got this real estate, why can't we compete with WeWork at the same level?
Yep.
And they see that starting at the CRS, at the doorstep to where the guest is starting to interact with your brand. And we think non-room inventory is kind of key to that. How do we industrialize it? How do we allow the local hotel to curate what they think is important to their guests?
And it's an opportunity, right? Because the non-room inventory / non-room products traditionally set in the PMS.
Yep.
Now, if I'm a call center and I have a voice reservation, and there's still lots of hotels with voice reservations, the call center can't pick up on whatever is happening in the PMS. So bringing it into the CRS, the non-room products are going to be crucial for that.
Well, that's a brilliant lead-in to my next question, which is...
And we didn't rehearse.
No, we didn't. If we had, wow. What does the PMS of the future look like? You've seen the whole evolution of PMS. You're seeing a transformation, I think, as you spend more and more time in the Amadeus world. What do you see PMS looking like in terms of what data it holds, what functions it performs, what dependencies it has on CRS? Tell me about the future.
Well, the future of PMS is that it's moving, like I said earlier, from being the center of attention to a set of capabilities. And Tim touched on it, moving away from CRS and PMS. We're building a platform of capabilities, and the PMS become property capabilities.
All right.
A check-in and a check-out and a billing, and maybe some reports. And then we have a set of other tools that do housekeeping, for example. So the PMS, where it used to be everything connects to the PMS, it becomes less and less, and it just becomes a check-in, check-out tool. No more physical inventory, no more rates. Everything moves to one central repository, which is the CRS.
Okay. Curtis and Will, you're dealing with thousands of mostly independent hoteliers.
Yeah.
Are they thinking about this transformation of PMS? Are they open to it? How receptive are we going to be?
I mean, my sense from speaking with our hotel customers is that they would welcome it, because having these two systems that must speak to each other in such a fully, deeply integrated way is quite difficult, and it doesn't work all the time consistently, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I think we work with about 100, over maybe 101 PMSs at this point with our iHotelier customer base. So making that transition is going to be a challenging one.
And I think to add to that, right, we've been kind of bred in this PMS-centric approach. That's where you load your availability, your rates, and your inventory. And now there's RMSs, which, oh, no, that's where I do my rates and restrictions.
Yep.
And now we've built a CRS-centric back-end revenue management functionality. But how do you get them to transition a PMS-centric approach or an RMS-centric approach? So we're agnostic to where you want to do it, because there's got to be flexibility in making that change.
All right.
That change is going to take time, you know.
It takes time.
And I'm sure there's people in this room in which they've switched their PMS system, thinking that, oh, I could go with a lighter system. They don't do the evaluation of functionality. They quickly realize it's not sufficient for their needs, and then they switch back to the old PMS system. And we'll continue to go through this vicious cycle until somebody fixes the capabilities of PMS and really integrate it into a CRS.
All right. Ted, because you're so close to owners and managers, what do you sense is they're thinking of what they want from PMS and CRS and their readiness to change, their feeling of urgency, their sense of urgency?
Well, first of all, we've always looked at PMS for check-in, check-out. But if you listen to what we're saying is that we're now seeing front desks is disappearing, more and more people. So then I start thinking to myself, we focused in the past on check-in, check-out, but as we move forward, people are going to bypass front desks altogether. They're either going to do it using their mobile phone or some other way. I mean, I was at Disney on Monday and I'm using my magic button to open the door of my room. So I think we're going to see the traditional functionality of PMS diminish even more. I mean, now we've got specialty housekeeping products that can reside in the cloud. So what functionality in the end is the PMS in terms of its relationship to that? So my sense is that I've always believed in, the issues of integration always throw up lots of issues. There are, and I have a simple theory in life, one throat to choke. And my attitude is, how long is it going to be before maybe Amadeus is going to come out with a single cloud product that has all the CRS functionality, the CRM, except revenue management or RMS and PMS in a single bundled product? And my attitude is, most of my owners would say, and based also on a subscription-based model. What have we had in the past? You bought a PMS system, you paid a license fee up front. And if you made a bad decision, well, sorry, I'm going to be stuck with that for 7 years. What if the service and support of that company that was supplying that was poor? You didn't have the option to move. Now, with built-in KPIs and everything moving to a subscription-based model, right? Some people still need to be educated about the nuances of CapEx versus OpEx. I understand that. But the reality now is that my sense is my owners are saying, you know what? If we can find a vendor that can accommodate the majority of the things, may not be everything, and we've got a single entity to deal with, then obviously, less issues. I can go and blame Amadeus in the future because they weren't able, or go to them and say, you know what, I want that feature functionality set. What's the biggest frustration we have now? We have all these little vendors coming to the marketplace with shiny new objects. And the problem is we go to traditional PMS vendors and they say, oh no, sorry, we don't have an API, or listen, you have to go through lots of paperwork. The reality at the end of the day is, let's find a mainstream vendor that can do all that and give them the tool set if they want to bolt on those other little specialty apps that are going to continue to come our way as we move more and more to drive everything from our mobile phone.
All right, so I've got about 19 more questions, but I'd be interested on any comments or questions from the audience with respect to what you've heard here. Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask about personalization, and totally agree with it. But are there now not barriers to personalization? If we take data protection,
Yep.
And also a movement, or there seems to be a movement from this generation or a new generation saying, well, actually, I don't want you to know all of these different things about me. And how dare you send me an email offering me a horseback riding and coming back, and where did you get that data from? I'm going to sue you.
Well, that's an interesting point, actually.
A real world intrusion on our vision. Yeah, how do we work with that?
Well, actually, we did some research, and actually there's a generation that actually wants to be targeted with something specific based on their history, on the purchasing history, but really targeted, right? The horseback might not be relevant for that person, but really something, the bicycle or the whatever cross-country skiing might be relevant for that person because based on their previous purchases, that is relevant. So that's one. GDPR is killing a lot of initiatives. That's absolutely true. It's not helping personalization come to fruition to what we want.
So do we work for greater opt-in opportunities?
Yeah, I think I think the answer to your question is millennials are now saying to us, what's in it for me?
Yep.
I'm willing to give up something, and I think the best example I can do is a couple of years ago I had an opportunity to have a presentation from Scott Campbell at Caesars, and they decided to roll out free Wi-Fi. And in return for free Wi-Fi for people who weren't guests of the hotel, they had to provide up some information. And what then they found is that millennials particularly saying, you know, hey, we're willing to give up that information, but if there's something that comes back that's beneficial to us. And the people who are concerned, in my opinion, I understand about the rules of GPDR, but the reality is that for people, if they don't, it's an opt-in, opt-out scenario. And yes, if I've opted out and I then receive emails with personal offers, then yes, I have every right to complain or do whatever. But I think you give people the opt-in, opt-out scenario, and that I think covers both sides. Well, that's my opinion anyway.
From a millennial's perspective, isn't my data already out there? Didn't everybody just get breached the last 2 years? So our data's out there. Now, for me, I get it. If I get something in return for my data, absolutely. If you can take better care of me, or if I show up and there's a bottle of wine in the room, it better be red, it better not be white. I mean, those specific interests interest me more, right? And I think it comes down to personalization of how I book, what room type I want to be placed in. Is it a weekend and I want to be having a good time, or is it a weekday I just want to be near the elevator and get in and get out? But I think some brands are doing a really, really good job of personalization. I don't think they're taking it deep enough. I recently became an ambassador elite at Marriott, and I totally thought that I was going to get this phone call from my guy. I said, yeah, perfect. I love goldfish and I love all these different items. He goes, yeah, no, we don't go that deep. You know, because I was like, you could really take this approach and like surprise me on my next stay and say, there's a literally just a pack of goldfish in the room, and I would go nuts. But like, the brands don't want to go that deep. It's just, you know, recognition, high floor, low floor, make a green choice. I think personalization is very dumbed down right now. I think it could get ramped up nicely.
I'd like to pick up on someone else's. I've been, this is my first time at a Kimpton hotel, because ISG is bringing Kimpton to Australia. But my experience of this hotel is, when I arrived on Tuesday, the receptionist said, your room is not ready. I said, where can I go to get a decent cup of coffee? You know, what would most hotel receptionists direct me to the coffee shop that's in the hotel? I said, I really find American coffee pretty ordinary. And she directed me round the corner to La Muse. And by the way, the coffee's great. So then she texts me. Then I get to my room and I get another text. Now, the other thing is that I might be making some people jealous here, but when I get to my suite, there is a plate to make my own mojitos. Little thing of sugar, thing with mint, a little soda thing, rum and a lime and everything. I've gone, wow, this is so much better than the ordinary standard chocolates. Today, I went down and wanted to print out a copy of the new Amadeus report, 34 pages. Now, in the old days, you went to a front desk or a business, they want to charge. This particular, and I've already emailed the general manager to single this person out, right? She couldn't be more helpful. And if that's, okay, that may not be, they don't know anything about me. Yes, I'm a rewards member with ISG, but I'm at the lowest level. But here's a person, you know, that's given me personal attention, and I'm now in front of everyone telling that people, and I will be writing up something on TripAdvisor. So sometimes we get so focused on the technology side, but sometimes that level of personalisation can be delivered by an individual who's committed to provide that. And if that's the Kimpton brand, well, come on, bring them to Australia quickly.
Thank you, Ted. We're all coming up to your suite later on.
Yeah.
Another question or comment? Yes.
Yeah, a comment about the data. So what about, before we had the struggle with bring your own device, and the people, all the guests brought their own devices to the hotel rooms. What about bring your own data? I think GDPR is fantastic into the future. We haven't seen yet what it's going to do, but that means that you can own your own data as a guest, and then you can lend your data to the hotel chain or the airline, and then you say, and now give it back to me. So what do you think? Would that be a concept in the future? Because then I would give all the data about all my 200 overnights in all different hotel chains to the place where I'm staying, so they know that this is a person that actually stays a lot in hotels. But this is the first time I stay with an Intercontinental, for example. Maybe they will behave differently towards me if I give them that type of data.
But I guess the question is what's the expectation once I have a novel on you? What do you want me to deliver as the hotel?
Yeah, something
Right,
more
so-
than Marriott, obviously.
Yeah.
You're obviously assuming you'll get something rich in return. I think it's an
Yeah.
interesting idea. Obviously, you have to think about having systems that can then capture that and store it, and it's interesting though.
Well, it's where the industry, and it's the reverse of what you're saying, where let's say I'm a meeting planner and I book 400 room nights, but that one time that I travel myself, I'm not recognized as a person that books 400 room nights. So it's getting that recognition at 360 degrees. But it's an interesting idea.
Well, here we're talking about system design. Does data privacy, data sharing, data deletion become part of the architecture of new systems, so we can do these things even that we can't imagine at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, over the last few years, we've had to make a number of changes to our roadmap to react to some of these new data regulations that have come out, as it remains, in terms of how long we keep data, in terms of how we handle opt-ins in a very granular way, and it's something we take very seriously. So it's a huge, I think going forward there's going to be more and more of that, and you're going to have to be very agile with how you design your systems.
Well, the mention was made of GDPR, and it has this forget me or erase me request. And with our myriad of databases, finding all the places where John Burns is and stroking him out is a real challenge.
But John, that's the power of a total solution also, right? So if you're not using 6 different providers, you ask once.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Why did you choose to use the CRS moniker as the new centralized system? Because there's so many preconceived notions of what systems do depending on what platforms you have. Was it just because it had most of the capabilities that will be reused in the future? And could it be the core hospitality platform or something like that to take away some confusion?
Well, I wasn't there when the decision was made, but I think, first of all, I'll reference IHG. They actually had that same sort of thought and went with a different term, right? If you don't mind me mentioning, the GRS, right? And exactly for that reason. Let's really focus on the guest, right? Because that's what we're in the business for. So we obviously supported that. I think we to a certain extent, maybe we just defaulted to the industry standard CRS. Maybe we've seen it before. You see it a lot of times with companies that come up with something's a little slightly left of center, and they try and recreate a category, and the amount of energy to get people to realize that it's really an iteration of that almost defeats the concept, because you end up saying it's a CRS, but it's something beyond, and so you're eventually circling back to it. So I think everyone kind of struggles with that to a certain extent.
It's a good thought-provoking question, because does our choice of CRS inadvertently hem us in, fence us, when we could be going even more broadly?
No, that's yeah, and it's a technology choice as well, right? So I need a system that could scale. The CRS is capable of doing 100,000 transactions per second, and if you scale to a chain level, take an IHG with 5,600 rooms, the number of reservations that need to be processed. So that's why we chose that to be the core of our technology, and then build everything around it. It's a choice.
We also do have branded Amadeus Hospitality Platform, so that is another sort of brand that's ours, that's out there.
Another question here.
Yeah, so it seems like you are very convinced about the CRS future and the CRS platform being the future.
Mm-hmm.
So what about you mentioned you have integration to 100 PMSs. Do you think they will give up that easy and say that, okay, we will now be reduced to billing and check in, check out?
Well, it's like cars, right? I mean, not everybody likes Tesla, and the electric car is here, but still combustion engines will be around for decades. It's not one or the other. Our philosophy is not to create a next PMS. There's lots of those out there, and the philosophy is for us as a vision is a platform. And a platform of capabilities, whatever those capabilities are, whether it's property operations or central capabilities or housekeeping, whatever it is. But a PMS, there will be lots of PMSs, and we welcome that, right?
Mm.
So,
but I think to your point as well, as we're seeing the consolidation of hotel groups, Marriott, Accor doing things. We're starting to see consolidation of vendors. It's my belief moving forward that there will be less PMS vendors moving forward. There will always be specialists, and we had this conversation at the industry summit the other day where a particular hotel group had moved to another system and found it wasn't to their liking, and then went back to the old one. So you're going to always find there'll be PMS vendors that will specialise in the extended stay marketplace or the resort condominium section and the little pensions that exist all through Europe. But I think you're also going to find, as we move from a CapEx model to a SaaS model, that some of these smaller vendors are going to find it struggle to get volume and scale and make sufficient revenue to keep the doors open. So, or alternatively, you'll see what's happening now, like with little boutique PMS vendors who have created as a special niche, being bought by bigger companies and to target that segment of the marketplace. Just like, Two Roads Hotel Group, little boutique, has been bought by Hyatt. So I think you're going to see, there's still going to be PMS vendors, but I don't think the sheer number we've seen in the past into the future are going to last to the extent that, someone said recently that something like across the world there's over 700 PMS vendors. Yeah. Well, I'd like to think maybe, and I'll put it on the record, I think in 10 years' time, I'm not sure you're going to see 700 PMS vendors in the world.
But I do think as it relates to integrations, if PMSs don't start opening up APIs and wanting to do relationships and partnerships with others, they will go out of business very, very quickly. So I think just as we build technology for the future, it has to be open source, it has to use APIs. You have to be flexible to work with other partners and allow them into the space. Otherwise, you're going to be a closed-off provider that everybody's going to build around.
You have to be willing to adapt to the new model, right? There's new reality and there's new dynamics. So if they open up, we're open. We have APIs. If you want to connect. By all means. So yeah, they'll be around. But
quick question here.
Yeah, I was just going to ask how you see the future of CRS impacting group business and offering that personalization experience that they're now getting, but at that group level.
Okay, we're going to have to extend this by an hour because that's a great question.
And nice market, yes.
And a complicated answer.
Quick question.
Who wants to take it?
I'll give maybe a quick independent hotelier example. We actually, given that we're now part of Amadeus Hospitality, we've been talking to a lot of our hotelier customers around meetings and events and groups. And I'm surprised actually right now. It feels as though there's a low readiness to bring a lot of that online. Some of that, it is not viewed as a particularly high friction experience. Now maybe that's because we're talking to some of the people that are booking these meetings and their job is about booking these meetings, and that personal touch is so important and allows you to have a much different experience, drive more revenue. So I think it's really interesting to think about how you bring that online and how you provide a more tailored, personalized experience. I don't know if I see, I think it's going to be an evolution of readiness on the independent hotelier space, but I don't know what you guys think.
Well, as you know, Delphi being a solution within the Amadeus Hospitality portfolio, that will play an important role in the platform, and our central guest profile will be also part of that. So really, it goes back to that single profile. So Ted Horner only exists once, not in the PMS, not in the CRS, and in Delphi. So really bringing it back to one profile, and then it's regardless if you're doing group business or leisure travel, if that profile exists in one location, it'll be easier. It won't solve all the problems, but it'll be part of the platform, and that's the power is in the platform going forward.
I wish we could do this for another couple of hours. We can't. Will you join me in thanking our panel?